Chapter 26, Chapter 24, The Illusions of Time. Chapter 24, The Illusions of Time.
Everybody ready to go?
Ryu asked, hand on the door of the memory tower, and the other 8 all nodded behind him. Some looked angry, some resolute, and others perfectly calm, but they all obviously shared a common sentiment, the absolute resolve to find the asshole who had been screwing with them all week and return the favor in a much less subtle manner.
Remember, anything could happen in there,
Burroughs yelled from where he was still sitting, over at the campfire.
If the outside's this messed up, who knows what he'll have done in there? Only thing you can count on is that he'll be on the 10th floor. The top one,
Bao called back.
We remember. Let's get this over with, then,
Ryu said, opening the door and leading the way in. Looking around, he grimaced. The circular hall was a lighter brown color, and had a spongy, living look to it that almost seemed to pulse. It wasn't quite as bad as the whale cave or the Queen's Heart had been, but it was still unpleasant.
We have got to stop doing this,
Cat muttered, apparently thinking the same thing, and most of the others murmured in agreement. Further discussion was cut off by a group of 6 tiny green dolls, dressed in ludicrous little uniforms with pointed hats. There was nothing amusing about the knives they held, however. Faces locked in painted scowls, they advanced, and with a nod from Ryu, Deez and Nina opened the fight with a pyramid of fire and a blast of frost from a floating head of ice. To their dismay, every single one simply dissipated against the dolls without doing a thing.
Well,
Nina said calmly after a moment.
Over to the rest of you, then. Brush this one off, assholes,
Cat snarled as she and Ryu rushed into the fray, Jean and Stan flanking them. Unfortunately, the little dolls proved to be highly resistant to physical force as well. It took several swings from Ryu's sword to shatter one of them, and Cat's staff was equally ineffective. Jean and Stan were even worse off. Fortunately, Bao and Spar came to their rescue, while Rand took a 5th, choosing to simply pummel it until it stopped moving. The last was advancing on Nina and Deez, who were backing away, the latter holding her cane before her like a shield.
A little help here,
the sorceress drawled.
On it,
Cat growled, dashing over.
Let's try this, then.
The end of her staff blurred in a series of dizzying motions, and a moment later, the doll fell apart, its head crushed and limbs scattered.
Okay, at least that works. You're getting better at that chop thing,
Rand told her, examining his smashed doll for a moment before judiciously hitting it once more.
How many times was that? 17. 18.
She grinned.
Any more? Nah, we got M.
Sten made a face as Spar pulled his whip away from their crushed target.
Let's just hope they don't come in bigger packs than that, though, or...
Suddenly tensing up, he put a finger to his lips and glanced down the dark hallway. Something else was approaching.
Nah, it's cool,
Bao told him, and Cat nodded as well.
Just one of the old guys.
One of the men who had been in Old Town before stepped out of the darkness, squinting.
Who are you? Just passing through,
Ryu told him, sheathing his sword.
Oh, it's you again,
the geezer muttered.
Sorry about that. My eyesight isn't what it used to be. Again.
Jean frowned in thought.
But if we have been here before, then that means... Don't overthink it,
Deez told him.
It doesn't even make sense to me. Right.
Ryu grimaced.
This way leads up, right? Should.
The old man made a face.
Unless it suddenly leads down. Wouldn't put that past me, the way my thoughts have been going recently. Why, I remember the time. Right,
Bao said quickly.
Thanks for the directions. It's just after 9, that's what time it is.
The old man continued to mutter to himself as the group walked past him, Nina and Deez both calling up magical spheres of glowing light to see by as they moved further down the hall and away from the open door. Another group of dolls at the end was dealt with before they continued up a staircase which turned around on itself, made of the same wooden substance as the hall. Thus, when Ryu stepped out onto the 2nd floor and found himself entering the empty ghost of a kitchen in what must have once been a lavishly furnished manor house, he could only blink in surprise, staring quietly.
What the hell?
Bao demanded.
This is Trout's. What are we doing back there? Count Trout was the nobleman who framed you for the theft of the magic hood, yes?
Spar recalled.
Well, he didn't do it himself, but yeah, that's the guy,
Bao explained.
Wait a second here.
Running over to a window, he glanced out of it.
Okay, ignoring the fact that this is impossible, that's a full moon out there. Just like the night I pulled the robbery. I get it.
Dee snapped her fingers.
We're back then and there. This place called up that memory out of your head. Is that why I suddenly feel like I'm on top of the world?
Bao asked.
Back then, everything had come up roses for me that night. I figured I was invincible.
Lowering his head, he grinned sheepishly.
Was I an idiot, or what? Hey, we all get like that sometimes.
Cat beamed.
No biggie. As much as I hate to ruin our cheer, mon amis, a thought does bother me,
Jean pointed out.
We are in Beau's role, yes? Here to rob this poor fool? That is to say. What happens if we get caught?
Everybody stared at each other, then bolted back down the stairs just in time before an armored guard walked into the room.
Shit,
Rand muttered as the guard walked over to the stairwell. They were clustered in a pile down there.
All right. No, wait,
Nina murmured, cutting him off.
He doesn't seem to be bothered.
Indeed, the guard's pace was a lazy stroll, and when he reached the stairwell, he stopped before it.
Idiots,
he said, looking at them without seeing.
When I find out who left this unlocked.
Producing a key, he locked a non-existent doorknob, then turned and walked away, humming under his breath.
Bao.
Ryu asked quietly once he had left.
I got in through the back door, the first time,
he explained as the group crept back up, much more quietly this time.
Got a key from Kilgore. Good thinking, Jean. I don't know what's going to happen if we get caught, but I'd rather not find out. Don't worry about it.
Sten smiled. Now that the threat was gone, everybody was relaxing, letting the confident feeling return.
We aren't going to get caught. Let's just find the way out of here and keep on going, hey. Stop,
Spar said, voice unusually sharp, and everybody else blinked as it held up a hand.
Optimism? From you, Sten? I mean no offense, but that is highly unusual. Do you not usually prefer to plan for every contingency, in case something does go wrong? Well, usually, yeah,
Sten admitted, chuckling sheepishly.
But come on, this is just a simple heist. We're not gonna screw this one up.
He trailed off, eyes widening in realization.
Except I did screw it up,
Bao said quietly.
I already did. But I still feel like this is gonna be the easiest thing in the world. What the hell is wrong with me? I don't know what you're all talking about,
Kat admitted. She was the only one still grinning.
But hey, that happens a lot, so whatever. Seems fine to me. It would,
Sten commented, then waited a moment, watching her carefully. She showed no reaction to the jibe.
See, normally you would kick me for that. I would, wouldn't I?
She blinked.
But I'm in such a good mood, I'll.
Slowly, her grin faded.
What they? I can't even get angry. What the hell? This place is altering our emotional states,
Dee said bluntly.
It's making us feel like Bao did when this actually happened. This isn't so bad, right now, we can live with overconfidence. But I doubt this is going to be the only place we see in here, so depending on what else it calls up.
She shook her head.
Good thinking, Spar. My emotions are so minimal that such manipulation was immediately noticeable,
the grass man explained.
Now then, where would the path upwards be? There's a second floor, but I never went up there,
Bao said dubiously.
Then that won't be it.
Nina frowned.
I'm beginning to understand how this works. The tower called this up from inside your head, not from the actual manor in Aurea. Only what you've seen exists. No. These stairs don't exist within the hallucination, and neither will the ones leading up. You said that this back door is where you came in,
Sten told Bao, who nodded.
Then if that was the start, the other staircase should be at the end. The storeroom.
Bao glanced over towards the northwest.
Back that way. Let's go check it out.
He glanced at Ryu.
You feeling okay, buddy? You're being awful quiet all of a sudden. It's fine,
Ryu assured him. He had been staying back and leaning against a wall while he had watched the others figure the situation out, smiling.
I'm just thinking. We're turning into a pretty good team. I have known that for months now, Monsieur Ryu,
Jean told him, beaming.
Hey, I never doubted it either,
he assured them as he walked forward, and they followed him, creeping down the hall.
Just saying. Alright, let's keep our voices down out here.
Carefully opening the door, he led them out into the hall, and they crept along towards the storeroom. Twice, they had to duck into side rooms to dodge the guards. Fortunately, the hired thugs weren't particularly quiet, and they had plenty of time to duck into a side room both times. In the end, they made it to the storeroom undetected, and when Ryu cautiously opened the door, a stairwell leading up was behind it. Continuing up it, they emerged under a night sky once more, but this one much more dismal. They were outside, for one thing, in one of the northern countries, Windia, perhaps, or Nanai. For another, it was winter, and bitterly cold, dirty, long fallen snow covered most of the ground and the few trees scattered around, thinner on the road but still present. Dark clouds covered overhead, promising more of the same, and only the light of a single campfire far away showed any sign of life.
Okay, this look familiar to anybody?
Ryu muttered, wincing. There was no question about the forced emotional state now. As soon as he had stepped through the door, his stomach had started screaming at him, as if he hadn't eaten in a week. It had been a long time since he had felt that kind of hunger, or the crushing, dismal sense of despair that had come with it, making him almost stop and wonder why he was even bothering to go on at all.
Damn,
Kat whispered, answering his question. Whipping her head around to stare at everything, she cursed again.
Damn. Why this? Why this night? Oh, Sky Queen,
Nina hissed like she was cursing, clutching her stomach.
It hurts. Why? Yeah, I could have gone my whole life without feeling like this ever again,
Sten muttered.
Okay, the sooner we get out of this one the better. Kat, where do we go? Over. Over there,
she replied after a long moment, pointing towards the campfire.
That's where I went. Right,
Ryu said, frowning.
Come on, people. Let's get this over with.
They walked slowly over, keeping an eye out for monsters. As they approached, they saw what looked like a rich young couple, their cart parked by the roadside. Laughing, they were eating and drinking from a veritable feast, their only weapon a crossbow at the man's side.
Oh, mademoiselle,
Jean said softly.
I did not know. You get used to it pretty quickly,
Bao told him, though he wasn't able to tear his eyes away from the fire.
When you grow up like we do. Some have it, some don't. Just the way the world works. Nothing you can do about it. What did you do about it?
Rand murmured, glancing at Kat. She stared at the campfire, hands tightening on the battle staff.
I guess we gotta wait here. That's what I did. Waited here. Until something shows up. Something?
Ryu asked quietly, hand on the hilt of his sword, as he stared at the campfire. A deep, dark rage was building up in him, eroding his thoughts bit by bit.
If we want something to happen, we can take care of that ourselves,
Dee snarled, starting to raise her staff.
Stop,
Spar told her calmly.
I feel the same way you do, for once, but we should stick to the original course of events. Yeah, I didn't.
Kat licked her lips before continuing, still staring at the campfire.
I almost did, but I didn't. Just a little longer. It should be any minute now. How long?
Rand's fists clenched.
What if it doesn't happen? What if something goes wrong? Indeed,
Jean murmured, eyes flashing.
Perhaps we should. Stop,
Ryu told them both, then nodded at Kat when they turned towards him.
Look. If she can control her temper, you two sure as hell can. They're not used to it,
Sten told him, then inclined his head towards Nina, who had fallen silent, arms wrapped around her middle.
Her either. They don't get this worked up. That's why it's hitting them worst. They can't hold their rage. Spar's fine,
Rand argued.
I am something of a special case,
Spar reminded him.
Which is not to say that I am not troubled by some of the implications here. No,
Kat whispered, far from expressing the anger she normally would. She was staring at the campfire in what almost seemed like horror.
No, I was just thinking about stealing some. That's all. I wasn't going to.
Whatever it was she was claiming not to intend, she never said. Before she could finish, a wild biru-biru crashed out of the snow into the campfire's light. Swearing, the man snatched up his crossbow and killed it, and after a few snatches of conversation with his wife too quiet to hear, they piled everything they had back into their cart and drove off, leaving the dead monster by the fire. As the cart moved away, the portal into the staircase was revealed behind where it had been, simply hanging there in the open air.
Okay, that's just weird,
Bao commented after a moment.
Let's go,
Ryu said, and they all walked over. As soon as they entered the door, the feeling of starvation was gone, bearing the despair and hatred along with it. Walking up the stairs, he looked over his shoulder at Kat.
That didn't really feel like you. That was a bad day,
she admitted quietly.
Normally, I'm better than that. It explains a little,
Rand mused, following them up and through the next door.
Wonder who's going to be next.
He froze as soon as he emerged. They were standing on a porch, overlooking broad fields of various vegetables, just beginning to sprout. The sky was blue, the sun was warm, and birds were singing. The farmhouse behind them was large, but not lavish, still, it seemed comfortable enough. It was the kind of place Ryu had occasionally dreamed of living as a child, simple, but pleasant.
Oh, hell no. This is you, then?
Ryu asked.
Yeah, it is.
Rand scowled, staring at the fields as if they were a teeming mass of raw sewage.
I should have known. What's wrong with this?
Bao asked, baffled.
Well, I guess it could get kind of old after a while.
He scowled then, looking around.
As a matter of fact, it seems pleasant enough to my eye, but my heart disagrees,
Jean said, sounding confused.
I feel as if we should be gone from this floor, as soon as possible. Well, that makes sense,
Kat growled, shaking off her earlier gloom.
The sooner we get up there, the sooner we make this asshole pay for all of this. Come on, let's go, already. Perhaps it would be best to simply move on,
Dees agreed, looking Rand over speculatively.
You're the one who knows this place, big guy. How do we get going? The North Road,
Rand grunted, setting off, and after a moment, they all followed.
We just go to the northeast. That's where the road passes by the fields, after the turnips. And then we just keep on walking. Leave this place behind, in the dust. Where it belongs. Yeah, let's get out of here,
Ryu muttered. It was almost as strange to feel the bitter resentment from Rand as it had been to know despair from Kat. The big man had always been one of the most calm, steady people he had ever known. The rest of them seemed to feel the same way. Following him through the fields, they remained silent until they reached the road and continued down it, finding the exit only once the farm behind them was no longer visible.
What do you suppose happens should we continue down the road?
Jean asked once they were on the staircase.
Or off in any other direction? Somehow, I think I can live without experimenting,
Sten said flatly.
It probably won't be pleasant. Anybody else picked up on the pattern here yet? It's going in the order in which we joined up.
Bao glanced at Ryu.
Except for you, buddy. Probably saving me for last,
Ryu guessed.
Which means Nina will be next. Yes,
Nina agreed quietly.
But there's more. As soon as we see what's up ahead, I'll know for sure. Know what?
Kat asked blankly as they walked out into a familiar sight to the two of them and Ryu. They had emerged into a dank, dark, stone labyrinth, one that stretched beneath the castle at the peak of the city of Winlan.
Hey, I remember this place. Weird. As do I.
Jean glanced around.
Mademoiselle Nina, this is your home, is it not? I must confess confusion as to why we are here. Yes, it is,
she whispered.
That confirms it. We're all seeing the worst days of our lives. The lowest points. When Bao was framed, when Kat was that. And when Rand left his home, or so I assume. I'm next. This doesn't feel so bad, though,
Ryu said quietly, then jumped as an old woman of the Wing clan emerged from the portal into the staircase behind them, dressed like a servant.
What the hell? What's going on here? This way, princess,
she whispered, then frowned.
Who are your friends? Say something that'd make sense.
Dees hissed.
Or else it'll all come apart. They.
Nina hesitated for a moment before continuing.
They're the other servants' children, remember, Nana? Ryu, and Kat, and Jean, and Dees, and all the others. Oh, yes,
the old woman muttered absently, eyes glazed over.
Well, children, the princess and I need to speak in private. Leave us. The guards said they saw some monsters in here,
Bao said quickly.
It's not safe. We should come along and guard you. Where are you going?
Ryu joined in, fighting the light confusion. For some reason, he felt like he could trust the old woman.
If it's private, we'll just stay outside and guard the hall. Oh, let them.
Nina said quickly, haltingly, as if reading from a script she hated.
If there are monsters in here, it would be terrible. Very well,
Nana consented grudgingly.
But you must stay outside. Follow me.
She began leading them through the catacombs, and they followed silently.
Where will the door be?
Spar whispered as they walked.
I don't actually know,
Nina murmured.
I suppose it would be where I lost consciousness. So, inside the room she's leading us to. She won't let you inside, though. Let me handle that bit,
Dees told her.
Alright, here we are,
Nana said, turning around a corner.
Stay out here. We'll be back outside soon enough. Wait.
The sorceress protested.
There might be monsters in there. We should check it first, to see. It'll just be a moment,
Ryu agreed, leading them around the corner, as Nina hung back with the old woman. Around the corner, they found a large room, empty save for a long metal table and a couple of chairs. There was a bottle on the table, and a piece of cloth. On the floor was a doctor's handbag. The door was on the wall above the table. Nodding at the others, he climbed on and in, up the stairs.
It's all clear.
Dees, the last one in, called behind her. They all waited in the stairwell, and a few moments later, Nina joined them, eyes dark and vacant. Nobody asked her what exactly had happened there, though Ryu had suspicions, ones that filled him with almost as much rage as he had felt during Kat's memory.
So,
Bao said as they approached the top.
You're next, Sten. Yeah, I am,
the Highlander agreed, voice grim.
Alright, everybody hold on a moment. We need to talk about this. You already know what to expect, I assume.
Spar asked politely.
No question about it,
he agreed, face locked in an expression of forced neutrality.
Here's what you need to know. As soon as we go through that door, you follow me, and stay in the middle. Let the other guys take the hits, and don't feel bad about it, they won't be real. They're all already dead. Just keep running towards the front gates. Once we get close, there'll be a ditch to the right of the path filled with bodies. The door'll be in there. Pretend you got hit and fall in. Judging by the way the people act in these, they won't care about you once you do that. Right.
Ryu nodded. Nobody else said anything, there was nothing they could say, and they all knew it.
Okay.
Taking a deep breath, Sten nodded sharply.
Let's go.
They emerged from the door at a run, and instantly found themselves surrounded by Highlander soldiers charging out of a barricade, presumably surrounding a base camp. Ryu couldn't see more than 2 feet in front of his face, thanks to the grey fog filling the air. Despite it, the air was swelteringly hot, which accentuated the hideous thirst he suddenly felt. It bore with it a sharp, hideous fear that he was charging into suicide, that there was literally no way he would be able to survive the next 10 minutes, and that his death would be as grisly as they came.
Come on, you monkeys.
Sten yelled, sounding as if he were totally fearless.
Let's go knock on those pigs' front door and blow their house down.
The soldiers around them cheered, though some took a few moments longer to do so, enough that Ryu's group was able to join in without being noticeably late. Without missing a step, they ran through the fog, Sten at their head and the rest in the middle, as he had told them. When the men started dying, it was sudden and brutal. A bladed bulla, 2 wickedly curved steel crescents on opposite ends of a rope, whipped through the air suddenly, decapitating a Highlander without a sound. His body fell forward as his head flew over them, and they charged on, not even looking. More bullets flew and more soldiers were hit, the lucky ones died instantly. Those less fortunate only lost limbs, or took the hits in their torso, falling to the earth with screams of agony. They were left behind as the soldiers charged onward.
This is insanity,
Spar whispered, a note of discontent actually audible in its voice for once.
Why would anybody do this? What could possibly be worth it? It's complicated,
Ryu told him shortly. The fear of death was getting worse, and it was taking all of his concentration to ignore it. Suddenly, the gates loomed before them, along with the walls of the fortress. Remember Sten's words. Ryu hurled himself to the right with a yell, and found himself surrounded by the heaps of the dead, thrown unceremoniously into a ditch like garbage. Both Highlander and Ogre clansmen were mixed, along with a few farm clansmen, in various states. Some were still bleeding, while others looked to have been dead for more than a week.
Oh, Saint Eva.
Kat gasped as she fell next to him.
The smell. The door.
Jean choked out, sounding as if he were about to vomit.
There.
The staircase hung in the air, and they all rushed it, throwing themselves through as if fleeing an explosion. Stan was the last one in, and as soon as he began climbing over the rest of the group like they were obstacles. Only once they were between him and the war they'd fled did he sit down on the stairs, breathing heavily, head in his hands.
Stan?
Nina asked gently.
Okay.
He raised a hand to wave her off.
I'm okay.
Standing back up, he dusted himself off nonchalantly.
Let's keep going. We're more than halfway up, but we've still got a long ways to go. Jean should be next. I must confess, I am not entirely sure what we will see here,
Jean murmured as they walked up the stairs, emerging into a dark room filled with strange, advanced technology much like that which had filled High Fort. The only light was from glowing glass devices, and in the center of the room, a panel of that same glass was set above a board of tiny metal squares meant to control it. Jean's sister Patabe was lying on the floor, limp and lifeless, a pretty adolescent girl with pink and white skin in a golden dress. The only other man there stood over her. As they entered, he turned to face them.
I thought I heard you following me,
Kawadara, the false prince who had attempted to gain control of the kingdom, said with a hint of amusement. Tall, brawny, and handsome, his sky-blue skin was offset by his cold, lifeless golden eyes.
Kawadara. You useless simpleton. Even now, you have no idea what is truly at stake here. I know that you have harmed my sister,
Jean said, glancing at Ryu and nodding slightly. The door onward was visible at the back of the room, where a secret compartment had hidden their national treasure, the soul sword.
That is enough. Is it?
Kawadara smiled coldly.
And if I have not only harmed her, but killed her already, you slug. Then you are dead as well,
Jean replied in a voice entirely unlike him, and they all felt the sudden, flat lack of all emotion that killed the fear they'd felt upon walking in, the terror of being too late to save the day. Drawing his rapier, the prince began walking forward.
Defend yourself, or do not. It shall make no difference to me. Ha!
Kawadara laughed.
That's more like it. Much better. Now you understand reality. Very well, then. As you wish.
He drew his own blade, and the two of them began to duel as the rest of the group crept around them.
Only 8 guardsmen with you? You should have brought more. Not that it would have done you any good. They will observe, nothing more,
Jean continued without a beat.
Repent your sins while you can, Phil's deep pute, though it will change nothing. Were you to beg me for forgiveness, I would still take your heart. Still with the flowery speech.
Kawadara sneered.
Still with the fancy foolishness. Perhaps I should kill your sister. Perhaps if you watch me cut her throat, it will finally wake you up. Then she yet lives,
Jean murmured, and a surge of hope hit them all, along with a solid, unyielding resolve, as they walked through the portal and up the stairs.
You will never touch my sister again. I have given you every chance in the world, and you have thrown them away. No more. Today is the day you die.
The footwork of the duel had turned them around so that his back was to the door now. Seeing that everybody else was through, Jean fainted, then stepped backwards through it.
I think you win the best acting award, man,
Bao told him gravely.
I almost thought you were actually gonna finish it for a moment there. I was, as you say, tempted, Jean admitted. I take no joy in violence for its own sake, but I must admit, it would have given me a small measure of satisfaction to maim that particular villain a second time. However, there would be no point, and the circumstances following were moderately unpleasant.
He shrugged.
It is in the past. He is dead, thanks to all of you, and my sister is fine now. Shall we move onwards? Yes, let's,
Spar agreed.
I believe I know what we will be experiencing. Simply follow me, and the way onward will present itself. Gotcha.
Ryu nodded. They stepped through the door into a dark forest, and instantly, he felt a surge of fear and confusion. Something was out there in the trees, and it was hunting him, and they all started running because they had to do something, and couldn't think of anything else. Strangely, it was the confusion that seemed to be prompting the fear, rather than the sense of being hunted. Ryu couldn't think straight, and he had no idea what to do, and for some reason that was terrifying to him, so much that he caught himself whimpering like a kicked puppy.
Shit.
Bao was cursing under his breath.
Shit. Control it,
Spar muttered absently, sounding more like it was talking to itself than them.
It can be controlled. It is only an emotion. Thought is superior. Over here.
A man's voice called from behind them.
Keep after him, boys. Hey, flower child. Your ass is grass. Ha 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 ha. Get it? Grass. What the hell are they even talking about?
Nina demanded, then gasped as a net suddenly spread out in front of them, catching them all and tightening around them.
A trap.
Cat spat.
Of course. They were running us into it. Indeed,
Spar agreed, sounding grateful for the distraction of explanation.
Once I realized that, I was quite rueful. Well, what have we here?
A familiar voice boomed, and they looked up to see MC Tusk standing over them, grinning devilishly as he fingered one end of his mustache.
A little lost flower, is it? Well, my good sprout, rest your artichoke heart, for your days of loneliness are over. Welcome to the circus, Maxi Tusk.
Turning, he waved a hand, and circus goons began dragging the net after him, towards a circle of carts around a fire.
Hey, boss.
One of them yelled as they pulled the net towards the back of one cart.
What do we do with the rest of them? Oh, throw them in the cage, too, for now.
Tusk shrugged.
We'll go back and see those pleasant young harpy ladies again tomorrow and see if they're interested in some fresher meat.
They all laughed as the net was hauled into the cart, where a large metal cage awaited them. The door of said cage held the stairs, and with some grunting, the thugs actually shoved them through.
All right, we're clear,
Ryu said once they were all on the other side, and those of them with bladed weapons drew them, hacking the net apart.
Get off me,
Rand grumbled towards nobody in particular. For obvious reasons, he had ended up at the bottom of the pile.
Well.
Cat made a face.
That sucked. Now what? Now, it's my turn,
Deez told her, looking unusually grim.
And I'm pretty sure I know what we're going to see. If I'm right, then the good news is, nobody will notice us. The bad news is, they won't need to. Stay as far away from it as you can, and get to the door as fast as you can. Don't stop moving, don't stare, don't get involved. Just go.
It. Ryu raised an eyebrow.
What's it going to be? You'll see,
she said flatly.
Let's go. Why do I have a very bad feeling about this?
Sten muttered as they proceeded up the stairs, and peered out through the door. The end of the world was on the other side, in full swing. The behemoths were both at least 100 feet tall, probably closer to 200. One was a hideous, misshapen monstrosity, her lower body a mass of eyeless, fanged golden serpents whose jaws dripped with venom. Rising from the center of the cluster was an upper torso like nothing that could ever be natural, a top-heavy mass of scales bristling with strange blue spheres and twisted green horns. Two spindly arms extended from the upper back, claws grasping, and the front extended outwards above a pair of grinning mouths, one atop the other, tiny black eyes glinting behind them. The other golden giant was just as fearsome, but far less horrendous. Its body was centaurian, four clawed legs bearing its weight, clad in the same armored carapace as the rest of it. A long tail lashed behind it, and from its back, mighty white wings beat against the air. A shaggy red mane draped its chest and shoulder, below multiple horns, and its face was that of a mighty dragon, roaring in defiance. Where the first's body glowed with a tainted, corrupted sense of glory, this one's body shone like the sun itself. They fought each other with power beyond comprehension, before the eyes of the stunned team, shrieking threats and curses and insults and boasts and voices that rang against the heavens above them, seeming to shake even the stars in the night sky. Trading blows like tavern brawlers one moment, calling up phenomenal magical powers the next, they summoned weapons the size of city blocks only to discard them after only a few strikes in favor of some new spell or blade or technique, both absolutely determined to destroy the other. When one called up the fires of a volcano being born, the other countered with the frigid heart of an ice age. A tidal wave that would have crushed a continent was dispersed by enough electrical energy to power an entire city of lost technology, and a tornado that towered into the heavens met a single huge boulder of stone that absorbed its fury. A network of blinding white light was laced with threads of absolute darkness, constricting and tangling within and throughout each other, as the titans continued their struggle atop a plane of flat metal. Ryu never knew who was the first to move. As soon as he had seen what awaited them, he was stunned by what was happening, so much so that he barely even noticed the deep, resolved sorrow that hit him. It was the sadness of one prepared to commit a dreadful deed, to shatter their own heart in order to do what was necessary. Despite that sorrow, and the terrifying battle before them, eventually the group emerged and began circling the fight, staying as far away as possible without nearing the edges of the battlefield. They all knew that should they go over the side, they would not be able to return. The door onward awaited on the other side. After what seemed like an eternity of running, they reached it and crowded through and up, leaving the clash of the gods behind. Only when they were safely inside the stairwell did they lean against its walls and fall to the floor, all of them breathing heavily, even Spar.
Holy shit,
Bao said after a long moment.
Mon Dieu,
Jean agreed.
You are almost, but not quite, precisely correct,
Spar told him, voice calm despite its visible shivering.
What was that?
Rand demanded, apparently not getting it.
The end of the Second Dragon War,
Nina guessed, staring at nothing.
When? When the heroes joined together to create the living incarnation of the dragon god, Loden, who slew Miria,
Ryu finished for her.
When they killed the goddess of lies.
He shuddered, remembering the feel of the naked power surging through the air around them.
I thought it was just a metaphor. For the heroes killing her. No.
Deez was the first of them to regain her calm. She was standing normally now, but her eyes were closed.
No, it actually happened. I was one of them. But why was it?
Kat started to say, then trailed off.
Sorry. Never mind. Top floors up ahead,
Sten said after another long silence.
Boss. Right.
Ryu stood up.
My turn.
He took a deep breath, then turned towards the top of the stairs.
I'm ready. Let's go.
The others followed him without a word, and they stepped out into the glen behind the town of Gate, against the cliff with the gigantic, sealed doors that had given the town its name. The stairs led out of the central one. Stepping out, they all looked around the gently sloping hill of tall grass leading down towards the small town where he had been born.
It looks like a nice place,
Kat said after a moment.
It was,
Ryu agreed.
Never saw this side of it,
Bao admitted.
Up here, I mean. Kind of wish I had, now.
He glanced over his shoulder, and stumbled forward, eyes wide.
Whoa. Hey.
Sten did the same, then yelped, falling on his ass in the dirt.
Sorry,
Ryu apologized, turning around to face what he had been trying not to see.
I should have warned you.
The gigantic, silver-white dragon that slept on the cliffside was still there, head over the largest, central door and claws covering the other two. It was nearly the size of the entire town, larger than anything Ryu had ever seen save for Baru Berry, but its face had always seemed strangely gentle to Ryu, despite its fearsome horns and teeth.
Is this who I think it is?
Nina asked softly as they all looked it over.
According to Loden.
Ryu nodded.
Yeah.
Walking up, he put a hand on the side of its snout.
My mother. I thought she died when I was 5. When demons attacked our town. My parents led the townspeople who fought them off, and when my mother disappeared and this dragon came to save us.
He shook his head.
She's been sleeping here, ever since. Guarding these gates. So it doesn't happen again. Then this portal. It is the source of the demons, yes.
Jean guessed.
Does that mean it leads to infinity? Maybe.
Ryu turned away.
But that's something we can deal with another day. This isn't actually Gate. It's just an illusion. Let's get it over with.
Leading them down through the tall grass, he tried not to think about the fact that he still remembered the easiest way through, even after all the years he had been away.
May I inquire as to the circumstances?
Spar asked politely as they walked through Gate, avoiding the townspeople, who were giving them dark looks and muttering quietly to each other.
The people seem hostile. They didn't remember me,
Ryu explained.
Or my family. There was a new priest, one everybody thought had been there for decades.
He slowly narrowed his eyes.
I never really thought about it before, but if there's corruption in the church. He was probably a plant. We'll have to send Ray a letter asking about that. I had no idea, man,
Bao muttered.
Sorry. It wasn't your fault,
Deez told him as they approached the cathedral where Ryu had been born.
That's on this asshole's head, and now, it's time for some payback. Wait.
Ryu froze, even as he stood in front of the door.
Did you say that the guy we're after right now is?
He trailed off, unable to finish vocalizing the thought.
Probably the one who did this to your town.
Deez nodded grimly.
Amnesia. False memories replacing the real ones. That's a mentats kind of thing.
Before anybody could say anything else, the door swung open by itself, revealing the inside of the cathedral.
Ah, Ryu.
Gaynor Battison, his father, looked up from behind the pulpit and smiled with his eyes closed.
I was wondering when you would return. Yu's upstairs, having her nap. Have you made some new friends? What the hell?
Bao said slowly, as everybody froze, including Ryu, who felt as if he had turned to solid ice.
Oh, you son of a bitch,
Dees growled.
Now then, children, that language is hardly appropriate,
Gainer admonished them lightly, still smiling and squinting. Much more muscular than most men his age, he spent just as much time working outdoors as he did on spiritual matters, lending his skin a sun-brown tone that offset his snowy white hair and beard, both cut short.
You might be my son's friends, but this is the house of God, after all. Behave, and I'll bring out some snacks for you. How about that? Wait a second here.
Cat sounded puzzled.
I thought you said. Oh.
Ran's eyes widened, then narrowed.
Oh. Top floor.
Sten muttered, drawing a knife, but before he could throw it, Ryu had burst forward, sword slicing at his father's neck. Without thinking, without speaking, without anything other than white-hot rage, he beheaded Gainer in one swift blow, and the old man's head flew through the air.
Ryu.
His father snapped angrily, reaching up with one hand to catch his own head even as blood sprayed from his neck. With the other, he clipped Ryu on the jaw, sending him stumbling back.
What have I told you about that sort of behavior? And in front of your new friends, too.
Holding his own head in his palm, he finally opened his eyes, revealing them to be empty white spheres, and his smile turned sinister.
It looks like I'm going to have to discipline you. You. You are a demon lord,
Jean said softly.
That is correct, Prince.
The old man set his head back atop his neck, turning it this way and that.
Congratulations on making it this far, all of you. I suppose I should greet you properly. I am ARandomAudiobookAppeared, Demon Lord of Famine. Famine of emotion, of memory, of thought, and hope and mind.
The church shimmered around them, and then they were standing in a wooden room like the first floor, with ARandomAudiobookAppeared up against a wall.
All of these things, I am taking from the wise tree. Just as I did from the people in your town of Gate when you were just a boy, Ryu Battison. Where is my father?
Ryu roared, hurling his sword aside and seizing ARandomAudiobookAppeared, ramming him against the wall.
Where is my sister? What did you do to them? Tell me. Tell me. And will you bow down, and give thanks, if I do?
ARandomAudiobookAppeared sneered.
We do need more of your power. God needs more of your power. Will you give your heart to God? Will you pray to God? Will you praise God? Will you sacrifice your heart and soul to God, and become God's power? We might be persuaded to put you out of your misery sooner, rather than later,
Sten offered.
You know, normally, this group doesn't go in for the other sort of thing. And hey, I understand that. But before I joined up, I learned a few tricks that I've found to be useful on occasion. And you know, somehow, I think everybody would agree to make an exception to our usual standards in your case. Any objections? Where are they?
Ryu screamed again, barely even hearing that, as he slammed ARandomAudiobookAppeared's head into the wall again and again.
Well, since you're being so persuasive,
he said, still grinning hideously.
One of my superiors had history with your father, and took him with him when we departed. Whether he still lives or not, I honestly do not know, and do not care. Nor do I have anything to tell you of the little lost girl. She fled from us, on your father's command. How touching it was, to sacrifice himself for her sake. Of course, a 3-year-old girl, alone in the wilderness, with monsters out hunting. Well, such tragedies do happen.
With an audible crack, Ryu snapped the demon lord's neck.
It's useless,
Dees told him as he threw the body to the side.
You cut off his head already, remember? None of this is real. Until we figure out a way to nullify at least some of his powers, all we'll be doing is playing his games. Nullify my powers.
ARandomAudiobookAppeared sneered, picking himself back up.
As you did with little lost mote, dear sorceress? Don't make me laugh. He was a victim as much as he was a villain, a poor, mad child who sealed away his own conscience to try and hide his deepest, darkest wish for suicide, to free the world from his malignity. Of course, he left you a weakness you could exploit. Whereas I have lured you here, into my world. Because you are ARandomAudiobookAppeared, blah blah blah.
Bao rolled his eyes.
Yeah, we know. We've heard it. Indeed.
ARandomAudiobookAppeared raised one hand, and around them, the wooden hallway became a battlefield under a bloody red sunset, thousands of men and women of more than a dozen clans slaughtering each other without rhyme or reason.
I am ARandomAudiobookAppeared, and I am no such child. Even in the days of the First Dragon War, I was ancient and depraved, and many were the fools who sacrificed their lives for my amusement, and that of my goddess. Only 2 among my kind are elder and more terrible than I, and you think you will find a way to break my power. Indeed we do,
Spar told him coldly.
For in your arrogance, you have forgotten that the mind which you now inhabit is even elder to your own.
Bending over, it lowered its hand to the floor, and the battlefield vanished once more, leaving them back inside the wooden hall.
What?
Aruhameral's head whipped around, mocking grin vanishing.
What have you done? That was not me,
Spar explained, actually smiling now as it stood back up.
I am of the grass men, and my mind is linked to that of my elder. Gandaroof has waited until now to use the last of its willpower, what I perceive, it can as well. Did you really think it had given up when it stopped fighting you? It was saving its strength for this moment. This is not your mind, and so long as we are within another, you cannot draw us into yours. There, you would be invincible, but here. Here, you are not. You thought to lure us into your trap here, but now, you are the one who is cornered and vulnerable. Well,
Nina murmured softly.
Isn't this an interesting turn of events? Cut to the chase,
Ryu said shortly, picking his sword back up again.
Does this mean we can kill him now? Looks like it.
Dee smirked nastily.
Why don't we do something about that, then? And you think it will be that easy?
Aruhameral smiled again, skin rippling and moving unpleasantly. From under his fingernails, thorn vines suddenly sprouted, and more plant growths erupted from the rest of his body, bursting from his flesh.
You rely on the wise tree to defeat me? I came here to destroy his mind in the first place because his knowledge was inconvenient to our god. And once I have dealt with you, I will finish that task, and leave nothing but twisted fragments of thought in my wake.
Lichen and grasses and sprouts and leaves all grew in the blink of an eye, engulfing him entirely in the mass of flora, an unnatural amalgamation of dozens of kinds of life, all part of the same pile of plant matter. From the center, a bright orange flower began to bud, and to each side of it a long vine whirled around, ending in 2 claws like the maws of carnivorous plants. The flower opened, 5 bright orange petals spreading, each with a rolling white eye embedded in it. At its center, a hideous green face scowled at them, vaguely human with eyes the same orange as its petals.
All right, people.
Ryu growled, feeling the breath of fire rise up inside him as he charged forward.
Let's. Aruhameral, 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 Aruhameral.
The demon lord hissed, cutting him off before he could transform, as his claws and vines began whirling around in dizzying loops. Despite his rage, Ryu found himself unable to look away, and the others were all similarly caught, staring helplessly. It was like some sort of twisted dance, and as he watched, his mind became clouded, fuzzy and confused. Almost as if he were falling asleep, he forgot what he was doing, how he had been doing it. He still knew he could transform, but he no longer remembered how.
What the hell?
Rand muttered.
My magic.
Nina whispered.
No. Yes.
Aruhameral leered.
Forget it. Forget your magic, forget your techniques, forget your skills and secrets and tricks and abilities. Now. Aruhameral, 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 Aruhameral. Can he do that?
Kat demanded, clutching her head.
F.
Looks like it, Sten said flatly, glancing at Ryu.
Boss? Don't tell me. Afraid so,
Ryu growled, charging with his sword.
Can't even remember how to transform. I am getting really sick of that not working on these assholes.
He took a slice at Aruhameral, and immediately realized that something was wrong there as well. It had been clumsy, amateurish, a sluggish hack based only on brute strength.
What did you expect, boy?
Aruhameral asked mockingly, ignoring the slash across his lower body. Bringing his claws up before him, holding them for a moment in a position oddly like a boxing stance, he began lashing out with them, striking Ryu upside the jaw and sending him flying.
We have been waiting for your arrival for 1,000 years. Did you really think we would be stupid enough not to prepare countermeasures for the breath of fire?
His head tilted to the left, then the right, and then it began to spin, the petals deflecting crossbow bolts and thrown knives both.
Head's the only place we can aim for,
Bao muttered, reloading.
I hate fighting plants. No vital organs or anything. Nothing personal, Spar. No offense taken,
Spar assured him, standing back and frowning.
There is more than enough trouble here already. You can say that again,
Dees muttered, lowering hers.
Nina. I know,
the princess replied, dropping to the ground.
everybody, get back. There's only one thing me and Dees can do now, and we'll only be able to do it once. Move out of the way, quickly. Trust me. Hold on a second.
Bao yelped as the other 7 all scrambled backwards, still shaking their heads to try and clear the fog.
You're not gonna. It's better than being useless.
Dees snapped as the 2 women resolutely advanced on ARandomAudiobookAppeared.
Now. Do it.
She raised her staff as Nina held out one hand, and then chaos erupted. Fire and lightning exploded out around them with none of the accuracy or shape or style a black mage normally used. It simply erupted in every direction, transforming the end of the hall into a blaze of destruction, and both women screamed in agony just as loudly as ARandomAudiobookAppeared.
Q Lenfer?
Jean demanded.
What are they doing? Wild magic,
Spar explained grimly.
The Demon Lord clouded their knowledge of magical technique, so they simply released their stores of power without any semblance of control. It turns upon themselves as much as the enemy. What?
Rand yelled, as did Ryu. Running forward as the magic faded, they grabbed the charred, moaning women and pulled them back. Both were horribly burned and blasted.
Damn. Can we do that too? With white magic? We could, but only once,
Bao told him, biting his lip.
It'd use up all of our magic in one go, and we'd have to down enough wise fruit to kill us before we'd get it back. Exactly,
ARandomAudiobookAppeared said through the smoke, as sparkles of light covered him.
Whereas I, on the other hand, am perfectly capable of healing myself. Don't,
Dees moaned.
Save the magic for when everybody need it. Get him, before he heals all the damage.
Nina made a sound that seemed to be in agreement.
Damn.
Ryu stared at them for a moment more, then whirled on the Demon Lord.
Damn it all. Do what they said. Let's take him down.
Everybody except Bao charged towards the mass of vegetation at the back of the hall, and again ARandomAudiobookAppeared held his claws up before lashing out in a flurry of jabs. Spar, Sten, Ryu, and Jean all stumbled, battered and bruised, but Rand kept coming, as did Kat, the former weathering the blows and the latter dodging them.
Doesn't slow me down all that much if you wipe my brain.
The Warren girl taunted him, running up Rand's back and leaping into the air.
Maybe I can't use all my fancy moves, but I've still got the breath of spirit.
Descending awkwardly, without any of her usual grace, she still managed to land on the pedaled face, bringing both feet down in a drop kick. ARandomAudiobookAppeared grunted in pain, and for a moment Ryu smiled, but then he heard a loud snap, and Kat screamed in pain, rolling backwards off of the heap of vegetation.
Fool.
ARandomAudiobookAppeared sneered, shaking the blow off.
Your breath boosts your agility and your strength, but not your durability. How long did it take you to learn to use your full power without breaking your own bones? Oh, but you're so stubborn, I'm sure you'll be just fine without both of your ankles, won't? Shut up,
Rand grunted, cutting him off, as he reached the Demon Lord and began laying into the floral face with both fists. As ARandomAudiobookAppeared flailed, the rest of the team reached him, and for a moment, it looked like a successful dogpile would ensue, until both claws opened again and released billowing clouds of noxious-looking purple smoke. Stumbling back despite themselves, everybody began coughing, Ryu most of all. As soon as he had realized what was happening, he had grabbed Kat and pulled her away as well.
What is it?
He gasped, choking and wheezing.
Poison.
Spar yelled.
It's not fast-acting, but if this fight drags out...
It stumbled, falling to its knees. The grass man's delicate body had taken the blows from ARandomAudiobookAppeared's claws much worse than the rest of them.
I gotcha.
Rand helped it to its feet.
Come on. Oh, no.
Jean yelled suddenly, staring towards the back of the hall, where the clouds were spreading over Dee's and Nina's prone forms.
The ladies. Crap.
Ryu continued hauling Kat back, glanced at her feet, and winced, as ARandomAudiobookAppeared had said, both ankles were broken.
Bao. We're gonna need that white magic now. Neither of them will last a minute otherwise, and Kat and Spar aren't looking much better. Right.
Bao waited until Rand was clear, fired off 2 more shots in ARandomAudiobookAppeared's direction, then made a face and closed his eyes in concentration. A moment later, a bright white sphere of light radiated outward from him, washing over them all, only fading away once it was near the Demon Lord. Almost immediately, all the bruises Ryu had picked up from the fight faded away, and he felt his lungs recovering, though that was quickly reverted as he breathed more of the poisonous purple gas that was still filling the hall.
Damn.
Sten cursed, whirling back towards ARandomAudiobookAppeared.
Should have waited for it to clear. Come on, let's go before he starts healing himself again. Yeah.
Bao agreed, stumbling forward and leaning on his crossbow, suddenly looking completely floored.
Looks like I'm out of it now, though. I don't know how you do this all the time, buddy. You okay?
Ryu asked quickly.
Come on.
Kat pulled on his arm, back on her feet again.
Sten's right. He'll just fix himself right back up if we don't keep pressing him. We've got him,
Dee said, though she sounded just as exhausted, as she leaned forward to put a hand on Bo's shoulder. Both she and Nina were healed, but they were still worn down.
Oh. He's already starting. Oh, no you don't.
Sten hurled another knife, and ARandomAudiobookAppeared paused in his casting to deflect it. Before he could resume, Rand had picked the Highlander up in one hand and thrown him like a shotput. Though Sten slammed into the mass of vegetation with a pained grunt, he almost immediately began slicing into him, scoring several deep wounds before the claws knocked him away. While he no longer held the knives with the same professional grace, he was still able to do damage simply by hacking.
Take him apart. If he's got no vital organs, we'll just have to shred him. Ah, of course.
Jean brightened up, charging forward.
Haha.
With a clumsy flourish, he shoved his rapier up to the hilt into ARandomAudiobookAppeared just below the face, like he was burying a stake. Both he and the Demon Lord stared at it for a moment, and then their eyes met.
Oh, dear. That wasn't right.
Everybody else winced as a series of brutal blows to his chin sent him flying headlong through the air.
We're lucky brainwashing him left anything at all,
Kat muttered, prompting a snort from Rand.
What? Nothing. Come on.
Ryu yelled, reaching the Demon Lord and chopping down into the mass with an overhead swing, wincing as he was battered anew by the lashing claws.
Let's. Here you go.
ARandomAudiobookAppeared cut him off with a triumphant shriek as the claws opened again, and the group gathered around him was once more covered in clouds of gas, this time a sweet-smelling pink. Coughing, Ryu tried to cover his face, only for the hallway to swim around him, then going dark as he pitched forward. The next thing he knew, something hit him upside the chin.
Oh, good,
Rand drawled sarcastically as he opened his eyes. The big man was standing over him.
You're back. Knockout gas.
Ryu asked blearily as Rand walked over to Kat and judiciously slapped her as well.
Bingo,
he grunted as she muttered a curse and began hauling herself back to her feet.
Me and Jean were the only ones who didn't get a big enough dose. Had to throw you guys out of his range. I don't think Spar'll be getting back up anytime soon unless we heal it again.
Moving over to Sten, he began slapping him around as well.
Then what's?
Ryu started to say, then trailed off, eyes widening. At the end of the hall, he saw Nina, Dees, Bao, and Jean moving around ARandomAudiobookAppeared. As he watched, they all took hits, crumpling to the floor.
Those idiots. They're not in any shape to do that. Had to distract him somehow, didn't we?
Rand pointed out.
We really ought to do something about it, though. No kidding.
Sten surveyed the situation.
What we need is a plan. Yep,
Ryu agreed, narrowing his eyes.
Okay, I've got one. Everybody rush him. Take a deep breath as soon as you get close. Hold it as long as you can. Dismantle him before he beats us up too badly. My kind of plan.
Kat smiled viciously.
Stay behind me until we're there.
Rand turned to ARandomAudiobookAppeared.
I'd like to see him knock me on my ass.
Without another word, he began running forward, and the other three continued along behind him.
Ah, there you are.
ARandomAudiobookAppeared sneered as they came close. The other four were all down.
I was starting to wonder if I'd have to start butchering one of these fools to get you to come play. Are you ready to finish this, then? Yup,
all four said shortly, simultaneously, before jumping him. As his claws lashed out, Ryu and Sten both reached up and grabbed them even as they were hit, hanging on like leeches. Cursing, he tried to shake them off, but before he could, Rand reached up and grabbed the vines just behind the claws. With a nod from him, they both let go, and the big farmlander leaned back and hauled, slowly stepping backward. For a moment, Ryu considering chopping them off, but then he realized what was likely to happen, and instead simply began hacking into the now defenseless Demon Lord. Kat had slipped under one of Rand's arms and was now tearing into the mass of vegetation with her clawed, bare hands, ripping huge chunks out and throwing them away. Sten had jumped towards the head, slashing deep rents into it despite his own bleeding hands, likely caused by fumbling his knives. Ryu simply hacked as if clearing away foliage, and Rand continued to pull, the massive weight of the pile of plant life keeping it from being hauled towards him. ARandomAudiobookAppeared was screaming and cursing, threatening and pleading, begging and howling, and all of them ignored every word. And then, with a hideous sound, both of his arms were ripped from his body, taking huge chunks of him with them, and the three of them all leaped back just in time before the black flames covered him.
Damn you all!
He hissed.
I am ARandomAudiobookAppeared. But you are too late. I have already accomplished my mission. Even without me, this old tree's mind will never recover completely. The knowledge you seek is lost to you, now and forever. Even though I fall, still your fates are sealed. God's time is at hand. Wait for it,
Sten said calmly.
Wait for it.
As they watched, ARandomAudiobookAppeared collapsed into smoldering ashes, and he nodded.
And clear. All right.
Ryu glanced at Rand.
Hate to ask you this, but... Nah, it's cool,
Rand told him, then closed his eyes and released his magical stores the same way Bao had.
Saved it for after the fight on purpose. Ugh.
Swaying, he pitched over, falling flat on his stomach.
Okay, I'm done. We're all done,
Dees pointed out, coming over and putting a hand on his shoulder.
Good work. That was pretty cool. Should be any minute now.
As soon as she finished that sentence, the world shifted around them once more, and then they were all lying in an unceremonious heap on the forest ground before Gandaroof, sprawled all over each other.
We need to stop doing that,
Bao muttered.
As of now.
A moment later, on cue, burrows fell on them, rolling down the heap of bodies before crashing into a tree.
Good job, I guess,
the old man told them after a moment.
Hope you weren't expecting a thank you note. I'm out of here. See you around, I guess.
Muttering under his breath, he vanished.
Elder.
Spar wriggled out from the pile and stood before the tree trunk, and the ancient face appeared once more.
Are you all right? The Demon Lord's spell seems to be fading from my mind, so I assume it is doing the same with everybody else. Yeah,
Ryu grunted, shaking his head, as they all stumbled back to their feet, some more reluctantly than others.
I can actually remember how to use this sword again. Could probably turn into a dragon if I wanted to, too, not that I've got any reason to now.
He looked up at the wise tree.
How about you? That asshole said the damage was too heavy. He was right,
Gandaroof said gravely, sounding more stable and serious already.
I'm recovering, but I can tell that there are a lot of things that are simply gone. He did a great deal of damage before you showed up and he devoted his energies towards you instead. Still. Some of it, at least, is coming back. Ask any questions you have, and I will do my best to answer. So he won after all,
Nina murmured, glancing downward.
I would argue that point, mademoiselle,
Jean said, putting a hand on her shoulder.
He is dead, and we are not. That is not what I would call a victory. Man's got a point.
Cat nodded.
All right, big guy. What can you tell us about demons? That's the question, ain't it? Big guy, Cat.
Spar muttered.
Really? What? Demons.
Gandaroof mused.
A unique clan, in that even I do not know if any of their original number were born to that form. They add to their number by recruiting men and women of other clans and twisting them into various horrific forms reflecting the depravities of their souls, who then reproduce. However, those born to the clan are never as strong as those who enter into it willingly, making it necessary to constantly recruit more. Still, I have never known them to do so quite as vigorously as in recent years. So they figure something big is approaching.
Bao nodded.
That fits with what they all keep saying about how God's time is at hand. Yes, this god of theirs.
Gandaroof frowned.
That worries me. The demons worshipped Miria, goddess of lies, until her death. If they have found a new god to follow, one even more powerful and more vile than her. There is a word for such a being. A higher power of ultimate evil instead of good. A devil.
Ryu closed his eyes.
Of course. We should have figured that out long ago. What else would demons worship as a god? Isn't it the devil, not a?
Cat sounded puzzled.
Does it really matter?
Sten pointed out.
Guess not. There was something else.
Gandaroof continued.
Something I knew, or at least suspected, about this devil, but I can't remember. It was related to the Second Dragon War. The second?
Ryu frowned.
Not the first. I didn't think demons were involved in the second. Well, some people think that two of the Tiamat unit had demon blood, the brothers, Goda and Moat, but they sure as hell weren't connected to infinity. No, it was definitely the first,
Gandaroof assured them, eyes focusing on D's.
You were there, weren't you? 7 brave men and women, led by a light dragon, set out to save the world, and they... I don't remember. All right,
Ryu said after a moment, glancing at D's, who was frowning thoughtfully.
How about this, then? Can you tell us anything about why all the trees are dying in Gate? That.
Gandaroof's eyebrows met.
That is the presence of the devil's greatest servant. His power is so great that he can drain the life from all things surrounding him simply with his presence, and turn it into energy for their god. They keep talking about that, too.
Bao scowled.
About turning emotions and sins and minds and lives into raw power for this god of theirs. Their god, their devil, will tolerate no life that is not his,
Gandaroof said, sounding more certain for a moment.
So long as his servants continue to plague the world, they will continue to drain it like leeches, until everything is dead and gone and his. We'll shut that down, then.
Ryu narrowed his eyes.
Is it Gate, then? Is that the source of the infection? Ah.
Gandaroof paused in thought for a moment.
That is where the greatest of his servants lurks, but... there are others. I sense a great corruption to the south, but there is also a spark of hope. The plants speak of others who know of this conspiracy, and seek to fight against it. Go south, and you will find them, and your enemies as well. Ray said there may have been another demon lord there,
Nina murmured.
It seems that was the case. How many of these guys are there?
Rand groaned.
4 demon lords, and Baruberry? You gotta be kidding me. More than that,
Gandaroof told him gravely.
4 is the number of the nobility of infinity, but 2 stand even above them, directly beneath their god. Baruberry, you know of, but there is yet another, almost as powerful, and infinitely more malignant. Unlike Baruberry, he hides in shadows, manipulating events from the background. It is he, more than any other, who offers the dark promises of infinity to the weak and foolish, and turns their souls to evil. Their recruiter.
Deez narrowed her eyes.
Back in the first, we always thought there was somebody else aside from Baruberry and ARandomAudiobookAppeared running around stirring up shit, but we could never actually get a read on him. The bastard managed to stay one step ahead of us. Never came out and showed himself. So both this guy and the 4th demon lord are in the south.
Sten grimaced.
Yeah, this day keeps getting better and better. You would do well to be wary of him,
Gandaroof continued.
He may be the most dangerous of your adversaries, for while Baruberry is callous and merciless, this man's cruelty and sadism have scarred the world for longer than even I have lived. His very existence brings not just death, but suffering to all he touches. His name is...
He snarled, a surprisingly emotional noise from the wise tree.
I don't remember. It's all right, sir,
Ryu forced himself to say, though he felt almost as frustrated.
It's not your fault. That's all on ARandomAudiobookAppeared, and we made sure he paid for it. You've helped us out as much as you could. The rest... we'll deal. That's what we do. Paid.
Gandaroof murmured absently.
That's right, there should be something else I should do, to reward you for your services. Ah, I know. When I was young, and the world was not quite so regimented, I had an account with the Bank of Prima, though I rarely ever used it. I haven't even thought of it in some time, but I believe it's considered socially appropriate to compensate men in your line of work monetarily, yes. That is the custom, yes,
Jean agreed smoothly.
Here, then.
The branches above them rustled, and a large, broad leaf drifted down with writing on it.
Here are the details of my account. You're welcome to whatever amount is left inside it. I'm afraid I can't quite remember that, either. Our thanks.
Ryu nodded, picking it up.
I hope you're feeling all right, even if...
He broke off, biting his lip.
Anyways. We'll be heading back home now. Jean, think you can do the honors? Of course, mon ami,
the prince said, and with the words of one more spell, they were gone, nobody commenting on the general feeling that what was supposed to be a major step in their mission had only seemed to set them back further than ever. I am the brainwasher.